picking up right where we left off on our hub and bearing. We are also doing the upper ball joint on this 98 Honda Accord. This guy right here, super floppy, there's no grease in it, it's been dead for a while. So we're going to do this pretty quick. If you're just coming to do this instead of all the other stuff, it's the only video you need to watch. You'll have your knuckle in there, this guy. It's going to have a, I believe, 14mm nut on the stud of the ball joint. Undo that, use a ball joint puller tool, or knock this free from the knuckle. The knuckle should be able to pull out. This guy is going to be mounted up here with some through bolts into the frame. You're also going to have a 10mm nut and bolt right there for holding in the wheel speed sensor if you have it. You need to undo that. And then once that's free, come up into the engine bay. I do not have a factory air intake. If you have a factory air intake, you'll need to watch another video on how to remove it. There's various 10mm bolts around here you'll have to undo to remove your air box. If you've got an aftermarket pipe, it's pretty easy. But getting to the point, right down here below your wheel speed sensor clip and behind your air box, there's going to be a 17mm nut. And this is the bolt that goes with it. This bolt goes in from the wheel area. This bolt goes in from the wheel area and has a 17mm nut and a 14mm head. So you're going to need to put a 14mm wrench down in the spring area to hold this down here, like that. You're going to put a 14 on that, and you're going to go back in the engine bay and take a 17 and loosen that up. And then once that's free, you can get the bolt out at that time. It's a good time to do it. Just pull it. I keep my nut on there for which side I took it off of and set it aside in a nice safe place. To get the other one is going to be a bit more complicated. So it is up behind the spring here. You'll see the 14mm head there. There's the hole where the bolt goes through. It is actually under your fuse box. You can try and get this out without moving your fuse box. If you go down, I also have a tie bar up here, it's aftermarket, but you go down behind this guy, back down here under all these wires, you should be able to feel for the 17mm nut. So you can get a wrench and a socket in there, that's great. With how seized and rusted this guy was, that wasn't going to happen. So what I ended up having to do is actually unbolt the fuse box. Step 1, take off the cap of the fuse box. Step 2, disconnect your negative terminal here. It is a Phillips screw or an 8mm socket. Take that out, pull your wire lead back and away. It doesn't matter if this grounds out. This can basically touch anything besides the positive terminal of the battery or any positive connections. That's why we're taking out the negative one. So just tuck that out of the way. Next, you're going to have 10mm nut there, or 10mm bolt there. And you're going to have a 10mm bolt back there. So that guy looks like that. Goes back there. What I ended up having to use was free with a 10mm wrench. Come in up behind the fuse box, back here. The complication here is that this part of the firewall is curved. It makes it really hard to get tools in here. So I was able to break it free, and then to expedite this process, this is going to be a specialized tool that I know a lot of you won't have. It is a ratchet extension tool. So your ratchet drive goes in there, and it gives you a little bit of overroom with your actual drive. So this is a kit you can buy from Napa. It's about $119 to get the 10mm through 19mm set, or you can buy individual ones, I think for about $10 a piece. These are extremely useful. I just took this guy and put it in back like that I also used a wobble bit and an extension to kind of work that free a little bit at a time. You can also try and go from the top with a wrench. It's a tight fit, but it can work. If you're having a hard time with it and you don't want to go buy these really expensive bits, you can go buy a short 10mm wrench, the ones that are about 2.5–3 inches long. You should be able to fit that in there and work that loose slowly. Get that bolt loose. What you're going to do, take a flathead screwdriver, stick it back behind this plate and pop. There's not a bolt here, you can see that. There's a little body clip, just a body clip hole, so you can just pop that one out. And once you do that, you take your box, scoot it over, and get that tab to slide past the bracket it was in, and just kind of chuck this guy to the side. Right now there's no energy in this. Negative cable's been disconnected, so there's no way any of this can be connected through power unless it touches part of the frame. So it's a good idea to put this cap back on or just disconnect one of your battery terminals. But this will give you access back here. If you can see, that hole right down there is where your bolt should be coming through. Problem is, if you stick your hand down here, you'll feel it, that the surface kind of curves back in, so it's really hard to get a decent sized ratchet and socket in here because it doesn't make a lot of room with the curve here and the curve here and the box here. I ended up just using a half drive ratchet, wobble, and 17mm socket, and then a 14mm wrench down in the wheel well on the other side of the bolt, and just work it loose a little bit at a time, tiny little back and forth. You could probably do it with a 17mm socket and 3/8 drive ratchet. It'll be shorter and make it a little bit easier. And then once you get that nut off, you should be able to push that bolt in a little bit. The problem I ran into was when I pushed that bolt through, it hit the face of the spring. You can't rotate this spring the way it's set up on its seats. It's only meant to be in one position. So I got myself a jacked up off the lower control arm until my bolt got in between the spring coils, and I was able to push it through. Same with the other bolt, and our control arm comes off. And then you can take this ball joint out. You technically don't have to remove this upper control arm to take the ball joint out. You can take a ball joint puller tool in place and do this. This just makes it a lot easier. And then it's also a good time to check these bushings. They should have some play, but they should be relatively stiff. This is what dampens a lot of the road noise into the cab. So if those are starting to get worn, or if they're torn, that's a very good example. Like that is way too much play. It should be more like that. That's the play you should have. I'm not going to do a video on replacing those right now. Those bushings I haven't actually done on this car before. On the previous generation, 94 through 97, I know that these were press fit. You could press them out and press new ones in. These almost look like they are flared into the control arm itself. Maybe you need a new control arm to get new bushings. But if you're in the aftermarket game, this is a good time to replace your control arm with a camber adjustable upper control arm, or if you're looking at how corroded everything is down here on this cord, good time to replace it if it's got any problems. And that is pretty much how you get your upper control arm out. Something to remember if you're just doing upper control arm and you didn't follow my previous video on bearing and hub, the caliper is still going to be connected to the knuckle, and the knuckle is going to have play this way. You don't want to let that tension from the hose, when the knuckle sits forward, pull on it. You're probably still going to want to disconnect your caliper, which is 17mm glide bolts on the back, undo both of them, pull them all the way out, and then you should be able to undo the 12mm bolt on this, which attaches to the knuckle, and just set that guy aside. That'll protect you from having issues with your caliper hose and overstretching it. And that's pretty much it. Everything's reverse installed from here. Once you get the ball joint pressed out, press in your new one, whether that's at a shop or you have a ball joint puller tool you get from auto store, and then you'll get it back up in here, put your bolts back through, get your nuts on, torque them down. If you had to disconnect your wheel speed sensor to do this, don't forget to plug that back in and run it all back through here. Once those are nice and tight, get your box back up where it needs to go. Put your 10mm back in here, 10mm back in the back of it, and your body clip there. And then, as I said, you're going to need to look at another video for factory airbox removal. You have to put all that stuff back in. And that's pretty much it for doing this. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate the views and the subscribes. If you guys got a specific question or want to know something about a specific car, I mean, I've got a 98 Accord sitting here, 2000 Honda Civic, You might have seen my videos on my 2004 Outback that I'm doing a whole transmission on. Got my 2005 Outback and access to dozens of other vehicles for videos like this. So let me know what you guys want to see. Thanks for watching.